yes. Welcome into Classic Wax, brought to you by the Beat Sessions. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Happy Tuesday night. Hope you're all having a wonderful evening. Hope the day has been good to you as well. Start of the work week, all of those things. I know it's kind of an unfortunate time of year. There's a lack of new music that comes out around the holidays. December is kind of a dry month in the music industry. A couple of things that have been released that I've had the privilege to talk about. Excited to have had those opportunities here. But on the bright side of things, December is a great month. It gives us time to go back, listen to some stuff that we may have missed throughout the year, get all those top 10 lists, top 25 lists, whatever people feel like indulging themselves in. I'm putting together my top 10 list here. That should be out next week for all of you in time for Christmas. Hopefully you all have that day off and you're able to spend it with family, with loved ones, friends, whomever it might be. Hopefully that you're just able to enjoy that day and make the most of it, regardless of what it is you want to do. Classic Wax, I feel like we're kind of into this thing pretty well, but some new members to the channel. And if you are new to the channel, couple stipulations with this show. We are reviewing classic albums, so the album must be released on the date that I do the show. December 17th. We're going back to 1971 tonight. We're talking about David Bowie and his fourth studio album, Hunky Dory, an amazing record, a really unique artistic piece of music that it's, you know, the starting point for one of the greatest careers in popular music. Really excited to talk about this record. The other caveat is that, you know, the record needs to be a classic record. It needs to be at least 20 years old. So obviously we are falling into that time frame with 1971. Hope you guys had a chance to check out the Daily Deep Cut this morning as well. That's happening Monday through Friday now, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern, or 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's 7 a.m., 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. There we go. It's a morning show. Let's just spit it out, get to the point there. But the idea is to have more interaction with all of you on that front. That's a show that is eventually going to become a members-only program, 99 cents a month. Not asking too much, but just for a little support. If you feel like enjoying that program, I think it's a cool one. I think it's fun just having just a song for the day, basically, is what we're going with on that. But something that's, you know, not radio friendly, something that you may have never heard before, or maybe it's been a minute since you've gone back and checked out whatever particular song we're talking about. And so tune into that. It's been a lot of fun putting that show together, and this show as well, Classic Wax. We are, again, looking at David Bowie and Hunky Dory tonight. Do want to lead things off, though. We, talking about Tool this morning, we were talking about Eulogy. It's a fascinating song, big old number, 8 minutes long. It's got moments where it's gentle and it stirs and it builds to this intensity and, you know, just explodes periodically throughout the song. There's just big moments with lots of just grinding heavy guitars, Maynard's big soaring vocals, and lyrics that really are fascinating as far as their ability to be open to interpretation. And what I love about Maynard is his ability to be timeless in that sense, to write in a way that, you know, you can go back to music throughout the years, and whether it's you or whether it's society, those changes, he seems to almost be able to see the future. There's this prescience that I find in his music that's fascinating there. So check that song out. And, you know, it's talking about it's fun having Snoop Dogg in the conversation this week. And I guess we could tie things in a little bit here. It's, you know, talking about David Bowie, talking about a guy who, you know, identity and image was something that it was so important, but it was also so easy to discard it and to move on with it and to keep rolling with the changes, so to speak. There's a reason that song is the album opener. But a guy that it's like, I love the way that he built his identity off of, you know, the fluidity of that identity, of always being able to present himself as something different, not being stuck in one singular box. And Snoop Dogg is a guy that, like, it's been fascinating watching him in the last decade. I work with a lot of younger people at the restaurant that I help operate, and all of these younger people are not really familiar with Snoop the rapper. They know he raps. They've heard songs. They get it. But he's reached this stage in his life where he's so much more of an entrepreneur. And I mean, you see him like 19 Crimes, the wine. You see him in the grocery store on wine bottles. You see him doing Corona ads. He has his own product with Dr. Dre Gin and Juice. I mean, the marketing, the number of things that he has gotten into. The Arizona Bowl. He's going to be down in Tucson here in about a week and a half or so with that bowl game. It's remarkable how much his identity has extended beyond his music, and how I think in a lot of ways he's done the same thing, not on the level, not with the grace and with the aura that David Bowie did. But Snoop is a guy that is certainly, through acting and other things, has tried to transcend just that limitation of being a West Coast hip hop star. It's a great thing to be. It's one of his finest accolades, I would argue. But it's been really cool listening to this new record, Missionary. Guys, I'm not gonna say that it's in the upper tier of his catalog. I'm not trying to compare it to Doggy Style or rank it or do anything, but I just think it is phenomenal to have Dr. Dre with Snoop on a full-length album. They've teamed up numerous times throughout the years, given us a number of great collaborations, but to actually have them in the lab doing their thing together for a full-length project is something that hasn't happened in over 3 decades. And it might not be 1992, it might not be Doggy Style, but the past is the past. I think that's a big part of what is going to make this album so successful and accessible. It's an album that I think has captured where West Coast hip hop is at in the modern day, 2024. There are elements of G-Funk that drive this thing, but it's got a different feel for sure. And that certainly has to do with change in trends, but also the changes in Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre. These are 2 guys that have been through a lot in 30 years, and they've been through a lot together. And so this record really finds them reflecting on that experience, reflecting on what it took to get to where they're at, where they're still going to continue to go. Because Snoop's only like 53 or something like that. Dre, I think, is like 61, or I know he's a little over 60 now. But it's just great to see these guys still be in the scene and still be driving it and still be having an influence, while also drawing in a number of newer fans, and also fans that have different tastes. The mixing in of Tom Petty, the mixing in of Sting. There's samples from Sly and the Family Stone, Pink Floyd, who I talked about Notorious B.I.G. and Hypnotize. The bass lick on that song is a sample from Young Lust. Pink Floyd had a massive influence, as much as I'd say any other rock and roll band out there. It's been a massive influence on the hip hop world. The idea of taking samples and messing with them, making the track your own, and creating something that in its own right is art. It's poetry, and especially there's so much hip hop out there. You listen to some guys, the poetry in motion. It's not just the words that they're saying, but it's the sounds that you're hearing. What it reminds me of a lot, honestly, is being back in school. And I had this excellent English professor, this guy, John Ulrich, and he would read Beowulf in Old English, and you could barely understand it, but just closing your eyes and listening to the sound of his voice, the accent that he was able to drop with that while he did it. It's a very impressive thing to hear, to experience. And I think that, that's such a magical part of what hip hop is. It's, the rhyme schemes and the patterns. You can even take it back to Shakespeare, as far as that influence and what it meant to people while they were enjoying art, while they're enjoying poetry. So, it's not like a landmark record. It's not gonna change the world by any way, shape, or form. But there was someone that commented on the Snoop Dogg Missionary review that said this is music that is still going to play well in 20 years. And I think that's a testament to the quality of the record. It might not be this, groundbreaking, game-changing thing, And let's face it, when Snoop first came on the scene with Dre, they were so one of a kind. The world was so brand new to that sound, but now that sound has been around for 30 years. It's been the foundation and the influence for so much that we hear on a daily basis. So, the shine as time goes on tends to wear off a little bit, but I think that this is an album that is certainly, seeing them polish things up and doing right by themselves in their careers. And I really enjoyed this. I hope you guys get a chance to check out the new Snoop Dogg record, Missionary. And we're going to tie that into somehow talking about Hunky Dory here, talking about David Bowie and his fourth studio album, again released on December 17th, 1971. It is fascinating. This period of time, this stretch of time, finds David Bowie in such a prolific phase. A lot of people, I think, refer to it as the classic phase, so to speak. But the album Hunky Dory, and a lot of people, and I would argue this as well, marks the beginning of that transcendental phase of Bowie's career, that classic phase where, you saw basically all of his albums be the vessel for an identity, for a concept. Obviously, the music so important to him, but the idea that there could be something bigger, something surrounding that and beyond it. While this album, Hunky Dory, it doesn't see that, you can see the essence and the beginning of those happenings going down on this record. And I think it's just a fascinating project for that reason. It's, getting into his catalog real quick, running things down, talking about that prolific period. But he puts out his first two records, both self-titled, second one commonly referred to as Space Odyssey, but those respectively in 67 and 69. And then he puts out The Man Who Sold the World in 1970. He drops Hunky Dory in 71, Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars in 72. Does Aladdin Sane in 73. He drops Pinups in 73 as well. Diamond Dogs the following year in 74. Young Americans in 75. Station to Station in 76. And then Low in 77. Classic record. And this is the first time in about 5 or 6 years where we see Bowie kind of as Bowie again. So that's why I bring that up is, talking about that phase of identities where, he really is just letting go of the persona of David Bowie and trying to embody these different characters that are a reflection of his exploration on these records. And I think it's just so cool. One of the dopest things to go down in popular music as far as not just the quality of the records and the prolific nature of them, but just the influential nature of what David Bowie was bringing to the table on a full front with his heart. But Hunky Dory, it's an interesting little project that comes together. We see the beginnings of the Spiders from Mars. So that's a cool feature from this record, talking about Mick Ronson coming back on guitar, Mick Woodmansey, excuse me, spit that out. Sorry about that, guys. And then Trevor Bolder playing on bass. We lose Tony Visconti. There's a little fallout with the band after The Man Who Sold the World sessions there after the release of that record. All of these guys basically had just had it with Bowie. Thankfully, Mick chose to come back and play there. Trevor Bolder, I think, is a cool addition to the group as well on bass. There's some great licks in this record. And then Rick Wakeman, just so influential with his playing on the keys on this record. And it's really unfortunate that he chose not to make more music with David Bowie throughout his career. He had the opportunity, opted to join the band Yes instead, which they've put out incredible music as well. Ken Scott coming into work on as a co-producer. He was an engineer for The Man Who Sold the World and for the Space Odyssey record as well. So I love teaming up with him and what he brings to the table. That's a guy that has worked with some of the most iconic, legendary music acts of all time. And so to see him at the helm on this record with David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust, Aladdin Sane, it's just this album is it's the beginning. It is the inception of the icon that David Bowie became. And I just think that's one of the best, the best things about it. And it's interesting as far as the shift in that sound. It's not just the iconic nature of his images, but also the shift in sound coming off of The Man Who Sold the World, a record that very blues driven. Some people even go as far to say that it's hard rock. I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's relatively speaking, it's hard rock for David Bowie, but some of the comparisons that I see to like Led Zeppelin or even Black Sabbath, I think are maybe overdoing it a little bit. I think that David Bowie's music has always had this, it's always been kind of light in nature. I think it adds to the ethereal element of his style, his sound, and just who he is. Whether it's Bowie up on stage or whether it's one of his alter egos that he's presenting. But that album's still very blues driven, very rock and roll driven, and a lot of people attribute to the difference in Hunky Dory as far as the sound to him composing songs on piano rather than acoustic guitar. There's still elements, especially you get to the back end of Hunky Dory, where you get that signature style of that breezy acoustic guitar that I think is just, it's such a signature part of David Bowie's sound. I think of some of his best music, but also seeing the piano take the lead in so many ways, especially on the front half of this record, is it's something that really makes it so much more different than anything he put out in his career. And again, seeing the trajectory of where he was about to go, seeing the potential for that liftoff of incorporating so many different sounds and styles into his own, especially when you consider that he did kind of start off in a little bit of that like singer-songwriter box. And, at this stage in the game in 1971, 72, the singer-songwriter has become a massive thing. It's almost, I would say, overmarketed and played out too much. So to see David Bowie become kind of the anti-rock star, so to speak, with this record is really cool. Excuse me there. And then we're talking about I feel like this record has two parts before we get into the track list too. And the back end especially, I feel captures his homage to America. The lack of success of The Man Who Sold the World in the UK prompted a tour's appearances in the US. It was more popular there, more successful. And so all over here, we get tracks about Bob Dylan. We get tracks about Andy Warhol, about the Velvet Underground and Lou Reed on the back end of that record. So I always found that feature of the album interesting, and for a guy that writes about the idea of escape, the idea of feeling alien, of wanting to leave Earth. There's all these different ideas that his music captures. It's interesting how grounded in reality and just the artistic world, the back end of this record is. It's to this day, I still don't know how I feel about it. It feels, especially a song for Bob Dylan, I think it's probably, as much as I love Bob and as much as I love the idea of writing a song for him, especially David Bowie doing that, I think of all the musicians out there that should handle that, he's definitely high up on that list. But it just doesn't strike me as something that's as enriching as the rest of the songs in his catalog, and especially the stretch through the 70s, the whole damn decade, frankly. He just was nonstop releasing some of the best music that the world has ever heard. And so just pointing that out, I do think the song Queen Bitch is fantastic, though. Really seeing that glam proto-punk side of him come out, a side that we would see many times over as the 70s went on, as he continues to put out music. So seeing that potential there is pretty cool. But starting this thing off, we'll get into the track list here. Changes is your opening track, and again, there's no better way to lead this record off. I feel like at this stage in his career, it's almost kind of like his manifesto. He is declaring what is about to happen, and that is that there are going to be constant changes in style and sonic experience, everything. Like if you're going to become a fan of David Bowie, don't expect to get the same thing record after record after record. It's just not going to happen. And that's exciting. I think it's one of the coolest things about this track. It's got this mellow classic pop jazz piano drive. So as an opener, being something very different than anything you've heard on the previous 3 David Bowie records makes it a wild experience. But then he says, okay, as that piano opens, and then the drums hit, that saxophone swells for this total funky feel in the track. It just, I feel like it just takes a different turn and then comes back to that classic pop feel in the verses. Piano driven, really just very pretty, but you get the classic changes into the chorus. Big strings that swell as that is ushered in. I dig that effect, that component of the production, that attention to detail, that nuance. Talking about guys like Tool, talking about guys like Dr. Dre and Snoop. I mean, they're legends in the studio for a reason. It's the attention to detail, the time that gets put into making sure that the final project is polished. Oftentimes, maybe not too polished, but having that sound, capturing that essence of what you want to put out. Oh You Pretty Things is your second track. Got this groovy bluesy piano to open. I love David and the piano on this thing as it starts. Really just a lovely element to this song and to this record as well. I feel that the piano element versus the acoustic guitar, what that provides, not just from the songwriting experience, but from the listening standpoint, really just makes this album feel in a lot of ways just gentle and soothing. But I think it also helps tie the different array of sounds together maybe much better than the acoustic guitar would have, especially with the pop flair. I think the piano is just it. Interesting song though, referencing the teachings of Aleister Crowley, Friedrich Nietzsche on this thing, getting into that like philosophical mindset that I've always enjoyed about David Bowie, really taking time to ponder, philosophy, science, the earth, space, anything that he's choosing to ponder. And this song is really cool just for all of its references and the unsettling nature of I'd say the lyrical presentation as well too. It's there's definitely this ominous feel to what he's doing on this particular song that I think makes it really cool. 8-line Poem is your third track. I really love the way that this kind of feels like a continuation of Oh You Pretty Things. Just love that transition. Get this melancholy piano and this bluesy country lead riff that opens up, and it's just got such soul. And the title says it all. You get an 8-line poem. It's one of the more interesting tracks from Bowie from that standpoint. And even just reading it real quick. Tactful cactus by your window surveys the prairie of your room. Mobile spins in its collision. Clara puts her head between her paws. They've opened shops down on the west side. Will all the cacti find a home? But the key to the city is in the sun that pins the branches to the sky. Whoa, whoa. I mean, I interpret that however you want. It's been a minute since I've listened to this album in its entirety and remembering this song and thinking about the lyrics. Love to hear in the comments what you guys think of that one. It's certainly an interesting song, and there's a handful of them on here. The Bowie Brothers, the album closer especially. We'll get to that one. The lyrics on that one are quite interesting. Life on Mars, though, is your fourth song. Signature feel to this track. And, no actual references to Mars in the song, I believe, but it's a signal of, I feel like this is maybe a little bit of a continuation of Space Odyssey and that idea of, yes, we are about to venture into very otherworldly territory. I've always loved this song. But her friend is nowhere to be seen. Now she walks through her sunken dream to the seat with the clearest view, and she's hooked to the silver screen. But the film is a saddening bore, for she's lived it 10 times or more. She could spit in the eyes of fools as they ask her to focus on. Sailors fighting in the dance hall. Oh man, look at those cavemen go. I mean, it's I love just the big, soaring, like bombastic nature of the chorus. It just, I mean, it finds that big hook, that big moment, and it's just like, it's enormous. It's gargantuan. This is a song that I think really captures the larger than life essence of David Bowie so well, and the title itself with that big music really, again, capturing the spirit and the essence of what is about to be. Your fifth song is Kook. This is a pretty little number. I feel like Kook's gets overlooked a little bit. This is a pretty little track that he wrote for his son, Duncan Zoe Haywood Jones. He was born on 30th of May, 1971. And so, right there, right in that time frame, David becomes his dad, and it's I've always been a big fan of the breezy guitar, ushers in the simple mid-tempo groove. Love the bass and the drums that work in there. Strings work in, then a little bit of trumpet, then the piano builds. You get a track that, for all that it brings to the table, I just feel like at the core of it is this big combination of Americana and classic pop. It really is a unique song, and getting back to that guitar drive, it almost kind of feels like this could have come out of some sessions earlier on in his career. So I like that little bit of a homage going back to that. And then Quicksand is going to close out your A side. This is a song that was inspired again by his trip to America, and just searching for what it is that he's looking for. Bowie's coming off a time in his career where it was very rocky. The lack of success with The Man Who Sold the World. Hunky Dory wasn't as commercially as successful as he would have wanted. It wasn't really until Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars where people were like, holy crap, and they garnered a little more interest, and people went back to Hunky Dory. So writing again about Quicksand, it's all about, the idea is that our thoughts keep our conscious from tapping into our subconscious, right? And so the general act of thinking, while it is important, is also the quicksand to our essence, to our identity. And I think that this is a song that this is about Bowie's search to find that identity, to find that next step. And I think that it's a really just solid way to close out this A side, which leads into that B side, that focus on America. And I think that's almost kind of like him signaling and taking that turn towards this new stage in the game. Fill Your Heart is your B side opener. Your seventh track is the only cover on the record by Biff Rose and Paul Williams. Really pretty true to the original though. Like this like bouncing piano, Bowie gives it a little more flair, a little more bounce, but it still captures that big band feel, the horns, the swelling strings that are there, works in big elements of jazz and blues that I really enjoy. Your eighth song, Andy Warhol, seems to fade into this spooky futuristic synth pattern. Got this sexy acoustic guitar that has this like Latin flair, this kind of rumba flair. I think it fits Andy's mystique and image, but apparently it was played for him by Bowie, and Andy Warhol did not like the song. But frankly, good riddance. I know he's very influential, and there's a lot of people that enjoy him, his art, what he brought to the table, but he was also kind of an ass. And so, he should have known better. And it's interesting, after all the years, Bowie talks about reflecting on that experience. It's just like, it was just so fascinating how he just didn't say anything. He just walked out of the room. It was just like, oh my God. That's definitely, that's maybe the only time that ever happened to David Bowie in his entire life. I feel like David Bowie would be the one doing that to other people in his, respectful Bowie sort of way. There's this little side note. I hate to get sidetracked, but I was just watching this video the other day, and it was reputable artist who had approached David Bowie about collaborating with him, and he was just like, no. And there's some big names on there: Red Hot Chili Peppers, Dave Grohl, and the Foo Fighters. It was interesting to see their response as well. And no one was upset by it. No one was angry with Bowie. There was this ultimate understanding of his art is so sacred to him, was so sacred to him that if you didn't fit into if you didn't fit into the puzzle, don't take it personal. It's just like I got to do what I got to do. It's more about Bowie and less about the other individuals, and to see them all acknowledge that, I thought was pretty cool. Song for Bob Dylan. I know I mentioned that earlier. I do dig it. You get this rock and roll open big. It kind of reminds me a lot of what he did with the band on the Basement Tapes. But you get this country rock open, big lead shifts to this like signature rollicking style. The chorus takes more of a big piano drive. Like there's elements of Southern rock that are working on the song. But it definitely goes bigger towards the coda, gospel harmonies that are working on the song. But unfortunately, I mean, just given the quality of this record and everything else that's going on, I would say that it is probably the weakest moment. It's going to lead into your penultimate track though, Queen Bitch, our final homage to the Velvet Underground and Lou Reed. And you guys know on this channel that we love the Velvet Underground. We love Lou Reed, and it's kind of like a Velvet Underground and Nico sandwich. Bob Dylan's the meat on this thing, but Andy Warhol producing that first record for the band, having that influence there, and then the falling out, and I think it's best that Lou and company were able to move on and do their own thing away from Andy. But Queen Bitch is just such a high energy guitar driven track. Sounds like something that maybe could have come from The Man Who Sold the World. But instead we have it on this record, but it fits well. It fits magnificently. And I think, again, another staple track that signals what is about to come throughout his career. I mean, just think of Suffragette City. Think of songs like Rebel Rebel. It's a cool track that captures like this great essence, this combination of glam rock and punk. I feel like in 1971, given where the Stooges are at, given the movement of that genre of the punk scene, it's there's no doubt that is a big part of what is driving that track and why it's so cool. And then your album closer, the Beulah Brothers. This is it's an interesting track, and this is a track that's been talked about a lot over the years by critics, fans alike. Like, what in the hell is this song about? I mean, Bowie usually gives us, even when he does want to talk about the otherworldly or kind of go out there, I feel like the writing isn't quite as cryptic as it is on this particular song. Breezy acoustic riff with kind of this stoic Americana tone to it. The song has this eerie quality, and I love the way that Bowie's just spitting these just loose rhythmic lyrics. And I shouldn't say they're loose. I mean, there's a really tight flow actually to what he's rhyming, to what he's saying. But I think there's a looseness in its delivery, kind of like a nonchalant sort of appeal there. And I love the boost in the guitar, the ominous strings on this song, and the way that it works in and out of its parts. It's a very unique track, and an impressive way to close a very impressive record. Hunky Dory is your classic wax for the week, and a very underrated Bowie record. I think that if you haven't given this album the time, or if it's been a minute since you've gone back to listen to this album, I'm glad I did today. It'd been far too long since I'd thrown a Hunky Dory on the turntable, and was happy to enjoy the experience. So give that some time this week. You guys stay tuned throughout the week for more episodes of the Daily Deep Cut. Again, that's at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Try to drop a few more album reviews here, maybe go back and do some stuff from earlier on in the year that I missed. And certainly we'll get that top 10 list out to you guys as soon as I possibly can. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you next time on Classic Wax.